Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, hello, Regis Kilbin is the name and Hearthstone is the game. And this is a review of the new nerfs that were just announced very recently and will be hitting Hearthstone sometime in the next few weeks. I think specifically the Blizzard designers made these nerfs or announced these nerfs in regards to the dominance that both Shaman and Pirates have shown as an archetype on the ladder, but since Pirates are such a dominant part of Shaman, and Shaman is far and away the most popular class on the ladder, I am deeming these really fundamentally the Shaman Nerfs, and that, of course, is why you'll see Thrall and his big grouchy face behind me. He's about to get considerably weaker on the ranked ladder. So if you're not familiar with the nerfs, I'm going to address them. There's just a couple cards, one actually a neutral card, but let's go ahead and jump right in and talk about what these nerfs mean and how they might change the game when they hit here in the next couple weeks. So up first is Small Time Buccaneer. This guy has been a curse on the ranked ladder as far as I'm concerned ever since his release with Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. He was just too strong in pirate-themed, pirate synergy-style decks, and that meant a lot of Shaman. Also, of course, Pirate, Warrior, and really aggressive Warriors. Even Miracle Rogue utilizes currently this card pretty well just because it's such a strong opener that can pump out so much damage and can be difficult for your opponents to remove. But as you'll see from looking at this new version of the card here, Small Time Buccaneer in the very near future is going to only have 1 health instead of 2. So he's still going to be able to put forward that really aggressive 3 attack when you have a weapon. He's still going to summon Patches the Pirate. All that said, I think this is an incredibly significant nerf that makes this card far, far weaker. And outside of the most hyper of aggressive decks that rely on super, super fast starts from minions, specifically Pirate Warrior that's all weapon-based and just really hammers for face, I think outside of that scenario that this card probably is going to drop out of ranked play. In other words, at 1 health, it's just far too easy to remove. Of course, 3 classes suddenly get a turn 2 hero power that kills this guy, whereas in the past there was just nothing sometimes that they could do, that being Mage, Druid, and Rogue with their pings. Even stuff like a turn 2 Silverhand Recruit suddenly trades into a Small Time Buccaneer instead of just being something that does absolutely nothing. So maybe that gives Paladin another edge. Another thing is that early game 1 attack minions can suddenly threaten this. So things like a Priest, Northshire Cleric can kill a Small Time Buccaneer, sometimes making a favorable trade, sometimes just making an even trade. But in the past, that wasn't an option to Priest. In the past, a 3-2 Small Time Buccaneer could just run right through that Northshire Cleric and still be around to do damage in a future turn. So don't underestimate this, of course, also against things like Whirlwind effects, so Ravaging Ghoul, even Swipe, Maelstrom Portal. This gets worse to all of that. Instead of taking those hits and surviving, it suddenly dies. So the difference between 1 and 2 health on a card like this that is all about establishing safely a sizable minion in the early game, that means this just dies too easily to too much, and I think it'll often just be a wasted investment. It's still a decent way to summon Patches, but probably really hammers each of the decks that utilize this card in a negative fashion. So I think this is enough to make Small Time Buccaneer fall out of fashion. Now, it's not totally brokenly bad. I think this is a reasonable nerf and probably the best way to nerf it. So Blizzard did a good job. I just think that it will be enough to essentially kill the card as far as ranked play is concerned. So not a awful, terrible, just fundamentally miserable card at this point, but bad enough that it will certainly dial back its influence on the meta, which was an important thing because this really was just a little bit too strong, a little bit too oppressive, and far too common in ranked play. So I think finally Small Time Buccaneer is actually going to be a small time card instead of a big time card. That said, let's go ahead and move on to the next card. This time it's Spirit Claws. And you'll note right away that this used to be a 1-mana 1/3 weapon, but now suddenly it is a 2-mana 1/3 weapon, so twice as costly to play. And This actually is one that feels like a little bit of overkill to me as far as a nerf is concerned. Not that I think the mana cost adjustment was incorrect. That might have very well been the best way to handle this card. I think it has more to do with the fact that because Small Time Buccaneer was nerfed, Spirit Claws kind of indirectly got nerfed itself just because that early game cheap weapon that empowers a Small Time Buccaneer is suddenly less relevant and less powerful simply because the kinds of cards that synergize with it just aren't going to be played as often. So I think Shaman is going to move away from a really aggro Shaman towards more of a mid-range Shaman, and the low cost on the old Spirit Claws was fantastic in aggro because you could do things like Small Time Buccaneer coin Spirit Claws, or it was so cheap to get out that you could roll a totem and get a Spirit Claws out and have a really nice play. So that the loss of that kind of deck in the meta, which I suspect will happen, is going to make Spirit Claws a little bit worse all on its own, and maybe even make the card feel balanced in a way. Not that this is necessarily bad in a mid-range Shaman. It's not. If it was a 1-mana 1/3 with so much upside thanks to its 3 attack with spell damage, there's still a lot of spell damage minions that can be run in a mid-range Shaman, the Azure Drakes and the Blood Mage Thalmoses, of course. So it still would have been a good card. I just don't think it would have felt quite as oppressive as it did because that aggro pirate Shaman is going to be less popular. It's going to be less common on the ladder. And I think if Blizzard had just rolled with the Small Time Buccaneer, Spirit Claws probably wouldn't have felt like an unfair, overpowered card in a month's time. That said, it has felt very good since it came out in Karazhan. If it was going to get nerfed, I think it really should have been in the Karazhan era before Mean Streets of Gadgetzan came out. Really, all they did is make Spirit Claws way better with Mean Streets of Gadgetzan and the whole pirate thing. That was clearly inadvertent. I don't think they realized just how good all that was going to fit together, since it's spell damage plus pirates, and that's not a natural synergy, but it worked so darn well. So if this card was going to get changed, I think I would have changed it back then when it felt like the saving grace for Shaman, who had just had things like Tuskar Totemic nerfed. So now, after I see the Small Time Buccaneer nerfs, this one feels a little bit less relevant to me. All that said, let's go ahead and analyze what the card is going to be in the future now that it's 2 mana. Is it playable? Is it good? I'm having a little bit of trouble determining that. I think it's still playable, but I think it's going to be cut for other things that are slightly better. In other words, it's not so overpowered in the future at this point post-nerf that you have to run it. I think we'll find other cards work their way into Shaman. It might be another 2-mana card that just fits a little bit better. Maybe it's like a Lava Shock to set up some overload stuff. I don't really know exactly what Shaman's going to look like, so it's hard for me to say. I think that this is just punishing enough to push Spirit Claws below the threshold of fitting into really, really top-tier decks. Certainly not unplayable. A 2-mana 3/3 weapon is really, really good. That's better than something like Fiery War Axe. So as long as you have some predictability in that spell damage and you're able to make it a 3/3 weapon, it still feels like a powerful card for 2 mana. But of course, a 2-mana 1/3 is not quite so good. So it's not like a 1-mana 1/3, which actually felt pretty okay in and of itself. So although the upside makes it good, the base level of the card feels far, far worse, and it's a much riskier play in the early game. So it's going to take the right deck to make this thing still fit, and I suspect that deck simply won't exist. I actually think a better way to fix this card, believe it or not, would have just been to make it a 2 durability weapon so that it's not 9 damage in a single card. I think the logic Blizzard cited for making this a 2-mana card is that they wanted it to be less of an influence in the early game. That's relevant. I get that if you can't play it quite so cheaply. But I think it would have been just as powerful to kill the weapon a turn sooner so that it wasn't good in that mid-game stretch where Shaman really starts to assert itself and get minions out there and make efficient trades that preserves its minions. I think it would have had much of the same impact while making the card still feel decent as a 1-mana 1/2 with a lot of upside. So that would have been my route, but this is certainly fine as well. Much like Small Time Buccaneer, I don't think this is an absolutely awful card. I just don't think it's going to be played quite as much. So, that said, there's one last thing that Blizzard announced sort of together with these nerfs, and that is that the ranked ladder is going to be seeing some changes in a blue post they made. They said this exact text: once a player hits rank 15, 10, or 5 in a future patch, they will no longer be able to de-rank past that rank once it is achieved within a season, similar to the existing floors at rank 20 and legend. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Once you hit rank 5 or whatever, you can go on a 25-game losing streak and still be rank 5 instead of falling back to rank 20 as you would have in the past. So this is nice little thresholds you can hit that once you get there, you can start playing around with decks and experimenting and doing fun stuff. And I think that's nice. It takes some of the pressure off of grinding the ladder. It's certainly a good, reasonable change. I don't think there's any downsides to this. And in fact, people who are really try-harding and taking it very seriously will probably find that those sort of threshold ranks are going to be even a little bit easier to play because you're going to get to rank 5 or rank 10 or whatever it may be, and people are going to be playing far less optimized decks. When you're in that stretch where you're playing people right between rank 6 and rank 5, or in fact, right after they hit rank 5, they're suddenly going to pull out the crazy wacky murlocs and funny stuff instead of really trying to grind. So you're going to probably get an occasional free game or two on your climb up the ladder, which will help move you to rank 4 or rank 3 and so on, and just give you a boost as you continue to rank up, which I think is another nice little change. That said, I'm not actually sure that this is what the ladder needed. I don't think the ladder anxiety or losing ranks is really what was the fundamental issue of ranked play. I think it comes more to the fact that the way the ladder works right now, it really encourages aggressive decks because it requires such a grind to get to legend or even to get to high ranks if you're not aiming for legend, that playing really fast decks that win or lose fast is far easier to rank up with than a really slow control style deck. So I think some changes that Blizzard could have made that would have been healthier for the ladder are extending the length of the season so that you have more time to achieve whatever goal you might be reaching for, whether that be legend or rank 5 or even rank 10, just so that you can play the kind of deck that fits your playstyle within your schedule, within your lifestyle, so that you have some sort of game-life balance, so you don't have to grind Hearthstone's ladder 10 hours a day to hit legend. Even I, as someone who creates content and plays Hearthstone a lot, don't usually hit legend every month, or in fact, I haven't hit legend in a while simply because I lately don't have the time to grind it out. So even if I go in with a 60% win rate, I just don't play enough to hit legend. So if the season was extended a little bit, that would help me reach my goals more consistently and give me the time to play the kinds of decks and do the stuff I want to do to rank up on my own terms, as opposed to feeling constrained in a ladder that drops me back a rank. Another thing that they could have done, instead of making this within a season, so right now it's just if you hit rank 5 in this month, you're never going to fall below rank 5. I think since they've established these sort of tiers or thresholds for ranks, another change that would make the ladder much better is that at the end of the season, if you fell back to the rank, the previous threshold, in other words, if you hit rank 1 in February, when March rolls around, instead of falling back to rank 15 or whatever it is that you do right now, you'd only fall back to rank 5. So you'd basically fall back to that threshold so that you'd start next season's climb much farther ahead. And that has a couple of advantages. Of course, it also reduces the grind, which I've talked about, which is nice because it requires fewer total games to get to legend. But it also prevents pools of players from mixing. Because what happens right now at the beginning of the season is that a legend player will fall back to rank 15. Some other guy will start at 18, win a few games the first day, and suddenly the guy that's normally a rank 15 player, or rank 10 even, will be playing against a high legend player early in the season, and that's not really a great experience for either player. So this helps move people into the pools of players that they're most like, and that would be a pretty fantastic change. It wouldn't prevent you from still climbing up and moving ahead and growing as a player, but it would just separate the ladder into healthier, more bite-sized chunks to make everybody feel a little bit more at home, which is nice. So all that said, in essence, I think this is a good, healthy change for the game, but I don't think it went quite far enough for what Blizzard needed to do to make the ladder more fun and a better experience and just more enjoyable overall. The nerfs, on the other hand, probably were far enough. I think this is enough to limit pirate dominance. This will certainly help curb Shaman's influence on the ladder, mostly in combination with a small-time Buccaneer. So I'm happy with the nerfs. I think they could have gone a little bit farther, and I probably would have, in fact, nerfed Jade Lightning as a card as opposed to Spirit Claws, because I think as we see the mid-range Jade Shaman move into the fray as the most dominant Shaman deck, which is my prediction, that Jade Lightning will suddenly feel like the most overpowered card. So I think a 5-mana Jade Lightning would have been a more important change than a 2-mana Spirit Claws, but that's just my take. All that said, that was my spin on the new nerfs for Shaman and the ranked ladder changes. I'm really excited to see this stuff hit. It's going to make Hearthstone more fun. So if you guys have any thoughts, comments, or questions on those nerfs or the changes, let me know. I'd be happy to read them in the comments below. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.